Hi everyone. Before I start talking and before I start discussing my topic for today, I just want to put a disclaimer out there because I don't want to come across as someone who's a hypocrite or someone who's got double standards or someone who's just lying. So first, what I'm going to say is currently at the moment I'm not in a trade union, okay? However, I passionately believe in the good that they do. And I will explain that to you as this video goes on. If you're currently not part of a trade union, I suggest that you think about this very carefully, especially with the political unrest and the political unease that is going on, especially back home in my country in England. I'm abroad at the moment, I'm teaching abroad, therefore there aren't any trade unions for me to join, okay? And if there was, I would happily make sure that I have signed up. Anyway, I digress. So, when I was a teacher back in England and I'd been teaching for over 15 years, one of the first decisions you had to make was your decision to decide which union you're going to be a part of. Now, for some people, that came quite easy because when you're at university, and I'm talking at the age of like 22, 23 years old, I'm 42 now, you have to decide which union you're going to join, and normally there's a choice for 2, 3. I'm talking about teaching unions, all right? So I appreciate that with other sections of work there are other unions that are out there, there are other options out there for those specific people. For me personally, the unions that were available were NASUWT, NUT and ATL. Now, once you've made a decision to join all 3 of those particular unions I've just mentioned, you then decided which one you were going to stick with, because the subscription at that time was free for a year, and then you decided obviously which one you were going to join. Like many people, and especially young people at that time, when I joined a union, I was thinking about the fact that it was an insurance policy, or shall I say insurance in quote marks. Only when an opportunity came for me later on in my career and in my life did I realise how much actually the unions do. And if you don't know, then maybe these difficult times, these uncertain times are the times when you go and actually inquire and actually get involved. They are keen for people to be proactive, and they are keen for people to join, especially from lots of different backgrounds and different groups, different races, genders. They are very keen for anyone to join, purely because we need to represent the people that are in the community, and that's you and me, okay? So obviously that's one of the main points that we've got. Now, I had been a member, like I said, for a number of years. I had seen things in the classroom, I had seen things with my colleagues, I'd witnessed various things, I'd seen them get the help and support they needed, and like I said, people saw it as an insurance situation where they're getting support from their trade union help, okay, and guidance. Now, some people actually use the union for more than an insurance purpose. So in my particular life, the experience that I'm going to relate to is obviously something that I've experienced firsthand. So when I was in my 3rd school, I think it was, the school that I stayed a long time in, I had been selected by the union rep at the time to consider becoming the new union rep. Now, the rules are very clear about you have to be voted, you have to be voted in. It's not just like, oh, we think you're good for it. You know, it's the members actually decide, they make that decision. But when this person approached me at the time, I was like, why me? Why me off that list of people that are on there? And it did startle me at first, it did shock me at first. However, she saw potential in myself that I actually didn't. And that says a lot about your confidence and your self-esteem at that time. But she did see potential in me. She saw potentially a really good candidate. And I'm glad she took that opportunity, because if anything, I thrived afterwards. But after the voting period and after I was voted as being head of the union, in that particular school, and I'm talking in regards to my particular position. I was NASUWT union rep in the school, and I must admit I was like having like anxiety attacks, like thinking, oh my god, how am I going to do this, how am I going to do this, how am I gonna do... and that sort of fear. And I remember a lovely colleague who I'm still in touch with called Deborah. Now Deborah was, and she's retired now, but she was a member of the union, but also she had a particular position within the union as well, so within the secretary. And I remember her giving up her time and giving up her energy and, you know, giving up that sort of side of her personal life and work life to come and put me at rest, you know, and sort of like give me reassurance that the decision that has been made is the right thing. And one of the things I loved about Deborah is her sense of humour. I loved the fact that she was an English teacher. She had a lot of things in common with me, and also like the whole aspect of like putting things in perspective, you know, and not making a big deal out of things. I really related to that, and I bonded with her very closely. Okay, that helped a lot to like raise my confidence and my self-esteem. And within literally a week of being in role, when you know, I had officially started my role as union rep, my school encountered some major issues, some major issues. So normally in a school there are certain key resignation dates for members of staff. There are December holidays, okay, so you have to have worked, you give a particular notice, and then you can start perhaps working in another school in January, but you've got to make sure you've handed in the resignation notice and given the notice and done everything above board. Or the summer holidays, you obviously give in your resignation letter then, and obviously you move on to the new school in September, but there is always a cut-off date. Sometimes it's April, sometimes it's March. It depends. It'll have changed now as well, depending on school rules, because obviously schools have changed. Now, we were called into a meeting in the school that I worked in, and that particular evening, I was also going to my first union general meeting. I'd never been to one in all the time that I'd been a union member. I'd not really particularly paid attention to it. I had newsletters delivered. I was keen, you know, to listen to the news and watch the newsletter. I looked at the information that was presented, and then I would sort of like think, okay, got that information, filed it, put it away, but it didn't really like click. It didn't really register up here. But this particular day it did, and we were pulled into this general meeting, like I said, with all staff, and the head teacher began her talk, and it was October. And I believe it was around about October 30, 31st, something like that. And this head teacher, she had been a student at this school. She had been a teacher at that school. Then she climbed up the ladder and the rank, and she was the headmistress of that school. She was loved fondly by the students, the staff, the parents, the whole community. There are times when I would drive past on a weekend after we got past school, and I would see her car parked on a Sunday, you know, on a Saturday. Now that's dedication for you. That school was her life. And she started this conversation about how she was leaving our school. And all of us, as you can imagine, we were deadly silent. Some people were crying, some people were upset, but we were deadly silent. You know, it's October. And we understand personal things happen, people, you know, there are family issues. There had been lots of rumblings going on in regards to our school and the way it was going and what they wanted it to be by the government, and by the councils. So for my head teacher to sort of say that she was leaving was like a big shock, massive shock. And obviously we're all thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? Who's going to lead us? Who's going to move forward? And she basically had, you know, we all think, been pushed out of that particular position and took retirement or redundancy or whatever it was, whatever decision she'd made. We all said our goodbyes to her, and she actually left that day. Now, that never happens. You know, that really does not happen. And that night I was really upset by it, because I thought, this is someone who's dedicated her life, her career, her passion. Maybe that's me one day. It can happen to me. And off I went to this general meeting in the evening, and there was only about 10 people there at the time. You know, obviously the meetings can vary. Sometimes there's 30 people, 40 people. It depends if you can go there. And I remember when it came to like discussing business and things like this, I sort of raised my hand and I'm glad I did. And I started discussing what had happened to me that day in my school. And the gentleman who was listening to me at the time, who's called Steve, and I will never forget Steve. I still think of him very, very fondly. And he listened to me, he listened to my issues, and he listened to my problems, and he gave me solutions. He gave me things strategically that I could put in place and I could be aware of. And I'm so glad he did, because after that, there was a whole roller coaster of events that continued to happen in my school. Now, he came and talked to me after this meeting, and he had a word with me and said, we need people like you. We need people like you expressing these views, making a change. We have something called, an executive committee. And once a month we get together and we have general meetings where we discuss issues like what we've discussed here tonight, but on a members sort of only. Would you be interested in coming along? You don't need to worry about, I remember him specifically saying this to me, you don't need to worry about your expenses, we cover your petrol expenses, food, whatever. But we just want people like yourself that are passionate, that have got, they might be struggling, but you might get some help and reassurance from other people as well. And we would love it to have you along. Now, at this point, it was a bit of an epiphany, but I hadn't realised it until later on because of the knock-on effect. But he saw something in me, very much like the union lady who represented me, to be the person that took over from her job. And I hadn't seen it. I couldn't see what they could see, but I do now, years later. Anyway, I digress. So I thought, okay, what have I got to lose? Now, obviously in my school, there was still problems occurring. There were still issues occurring. Within a short while, we were being forced to turn into an academy, and academisation began within England. And the union, when I went to the general meeting, they were discussing what was happening, the real reality of academisation. And I was then going back into school and I was relating this to the staff. Some of the staff seriously did not want to hear me, didn't want to listen to me, it was almost like I was going, bah, 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 and they were going, They didn't want to hear it. They didn't really want to accept that they were going to be facing these challenges and these hard times and these difficult positions, and that their rights as a human being, their rights as a teacher, their rights as a worker were going to be torn apart. Okay, they didn't want to see that. I kept being honest with them and telling them, look, things are going to happen, things are going to change. We need to be standing up, we need to be speaking up, we need to be speaking out, because you can't just make me do it for the whole of you. You all need to stand together. And, as things progressed, as I got more compassionate and I got more involved, I was off doing various courses for the union when time permitted. I also have to thank them for that, because they do deliver a huge amount of courses that are so brilliant. Okay, they are exceptionally delivered. They are delivered by qualified people that they know what it's like being in the classroom. They're not somebody who's an ancient dinosaur who's in the classroom like 80 years ago. There's someone who are relevant. They know things up to date, and they are the ones that are relating the information back as well to you and me, who are in the classroom at the moment. So it's quite informative to go and be involved in those sort of courses. And if anything, it gives you skills that you think you might not need, but actually you do. Okay, so for example, like leadership skills, behavior management skills, team worker skills. I went on to do some other courses, which I'll go on to in a moment. But these are very, very proactive courses. And the one thing it taught me is this voice that you can hear at the moment. It gave me the confidence to express my voice. And as I'm saying to you about this situation in my particular school that I was working in, you know, people were getting very high rate as our school faced closure. Now remember what I said to you, up till that point, nobody really wanted to hear what I was trying to say. I'd gone on various protests, by the way. I'd gone to London several times. I was with various marches, various protests. I even did a protest about our school closure. I think there was about 4 or 5 of us that turned up. I was in a protest outside, you know, various Leeds City Council, you know, chambers, because they were closing various things, and we as a union didn't agree to some of these closures. And the closures I'm talking about are where the most vulnerable have been impacted and affected, and that is extremely disheartening to see. And they might not have a voice, but we do, and we can raise that voice, we can express that voice, and we can help people that are in a position of being patronised and not being looked after and not being expressed. You know, you have to stand up and do your thing. As you know, the years went on in my particular school, as I said to you, I had got to the position of not just working as a union rep, but I ended up being trained as a caseworker for the union. I also attended like ethnic minority rallies and ethnic minority courses, and these were so important for me to attend, because you know, in my school, I was lucky that there was 4 or 5 of us that were ethnic minority teachers. Growing up for me, there was one. And I think the lady was from a Caribbean or Jamaican background, but still she represented, for me, as a brown child, an Asian child, she represented somebody that sort of resembled me and my background. But the rest of the teachers were white, middle class, upper class. So they didn't really represent me. And that's not disrespect to the teachers, but times were changing. Now, in this particular school I was in, you know, I had the opportunity to stand for an election. A position came up for an assistant secretary within the union. That would mean that you were seconded for one day a week, as it turned out for me. I stood for election, I wrote my speech, and prior to that, I had been an active person going to these general meetings, to then actually chairing these meetings, being a vice chairman, and then before I know it, I'm actually the president of these meetings. I'm chairing them for lots of other people. I also ended up, like I said, a trained caseworker. And that was such a proud moment in my life, knowing that I could go in and help other people in a less fortunate position, especially people of myself that weren't necessarily being represented. Going to ethnic minority rallies, as I said, or conferences, made me realise, you know, wow, there is a lot more of us, you know, than I thought. And by that I mean ethnic minority teachers. The conferences were held in Birmingham, and it was empowering to see the problems I'm facing were the same problems they were facing. You know, not being able to get a position of leadership, for example, not being able to get a position of authority, or facing racism in the classroom or prejudice. You know, these were real issues that we were facing. Now, I stood for election, and 4,000 people at the time, because that's how many members we had to vote, and I won. And I must admit, it was a very, very proud moment in my life, and something that I hold dear in my heart, because it taught me a lot. I could make changes. And when my school did agree at the time, before they became an academy, they did agree to facility time, as we call it. They allowed me to, basically be away from school, and we negotiated with the school. A supply teacher came in, taught my lessons. I delivered certain things and resources. Between the two of us, we worked out a schedule. But also at the same time, it was so nice to take a step out of the classroom and be somewhere else. And the things that I came across were, with my other colleagues, we would go to big meetings with the council, for example. And when we're looking at, work standards, work rights, we're looking at particular things that affect me and you in the classroom, the rules, the regulations, everything, the core of what you have to follow. We had the voice, we had the opportunity to make that change. And I have to remember, I would go back to the classroom and I would tell them, this is what your union is doing for you. These are the changes that the union are doing. Is there anything else that you can think of? You know, I'm here to listen to you. And this is what I mean about not being an insurance, okay? They're more than that. They're making huge, massive changes for the better, for the future. When we've done rallies and things like that, this is standing up for injustice. It's standing up for change. So, for example, I can remember on one rally where we stood with the firemen. You know, the firemen that were losing their jobs, losing their rights. It wasn't just about schools and academisation and privatisation. We stood for other people as well as ourselves, because we're in this together, okay? When my school went through this change of academisation, you know, all hell broke loose, basically. They were closing our school down. Staff were facing redundancy. Quite a lot of staff were facing redundancy at Christmas. At Christmas, just let that sink in. And I'm talking over 25 members of staff. Now, that point, people then started to listen to the union, okay? And it's a shame in some respects, reflecting back, that it took them that long to bank on the union as someone there to support them and to help them. Other people, you know, took redundancy packages. Some were pushed out. Some people left. Everybody's going to have their own particular situations that they have to sort of, I guess, relate to, rely on. I'm not judging anybody. We all have our own predicaments, our own family situations, financial situations that sometimes is not easy to, you know, just walk away from and leave. Now, in my particular school, when it was turned into an academy and it was run by unscrupulous people, shall we say, I saw horrible injustices being carried out. And although I'm not going to go into story time and tell you those, what I will say is I can remember passionately this one particular principal that had taken over our particular school, bullying, victimising, ridiculing, humiliating members of staff on a daily basis. And I can remember one particular briefing morning where I had already, you know, previously arranged with the other union reps, because we stood together, we stood our ground, that we're not going to have this. We need to have a joint meeting so that all members of staff know their rights, know their responsibilities, got advice, that we needed resolutions, you know, for the horrible, you know, predicament we were in. And I remember that after the principal had her messages and somebody else delivered her messages, and this is one particular day where this particular principal, she's no longer there anymore, but she tore strips off people and made them feel very small. And bullies do that, okay? Doesn't matter if it's a child, an adult can be a bully as well. And I can remember people like putting their hand up and saying, I've got this message and this message. And I put my hand up, and I remember the room being just deadly silent, and I said, union meeting tomorrow, 3 o'clock in the library, hope to see you there. Tea and coffee and refreshments and everything will be available. And I remember that my stomach was in knots, because this woman, she was looking at me like she wanted to kill me, okay? She wanted to kill me for opening my mouth and for speaking and for basically, maybe in her respects, minimising or perhaps ridiculing what she was trying to do. But I'm not into dictatorship roles. And other messages then continued after the whole room had been deadly silent. Let you think about that. Once she had left the room and other people had left the room, I kid you not, I had so many members of staff come up to me and do this. Well done. Well done. Well done. They were too scared to say something. That's how we were made to feel, all right? And me raising my voice, even though it was a message, and like I said, I was scared myself. Like, what am I doing? You know? But I realised I had to raise that voice. I had to make this be heard, and I had to say it out loud. And by doing that, I helped other people in that room feel like, one, maybe I'm holding their hand sort of thing, but you're not alone. We're not in this alone. There are people out there helping us, supporting us. and there are people that are on our side. You know, this can't continue. Now, sadly, you know, our school was turned into an academy, but we fought. That's the main thing. The thing is, we fought, and we fought some really big battles, and the people in the school fought together. They fought together. They really did stand up and, you know, do that whole thing of like stand up and be counted. Some of the schools, they were doing strikes, they were doing picket lines, all sorts of people doing various actions to try and make sure that our school was safe. You know, and we were in unprecedented times. My particular school, as things continued, you know, we had to really get union help, big time, big time. An incident happened in my classroom months and months after this, where a girl tried to stab someone with a razor blade in my class. And this is not long after we had lost a colleague who had sadly been stabbed to death in a Catholic school not far away. And the penny drops, you know, that your life is at risk, and you know, you can be injured or hurt at any time. And as I said to you, the union are there to support you, encourage you, help you, and, you know, help you grow, because sometimes these people in positions of power are out for a particular agenda. Not always. There are some good employees out there, but on the whole, there is some that aren't. Now, the union, you know, did a fantastic job, not just NASUWT, but NUT and some of the other unions as well. GMB, I think, was the other one that was in our school, did several things to try and help things go forward and help resolve some of these solutions, you know. And it took a long time to try even get anywhere, to get some clarity. Now, sadly, when I left that school, I went and, you know, joined a different area, different school, and I sadly had to leave that particular role as a union rep. I made sure there was someone that would take over, but it saddened me that the school didn't support my facility time. It saddened the union, you know. They fought it, but they couldn't do anything about it. When I did move to another school, I had some issues at that particular school, but one of the roles I continued to do for the union of that particular area, because we're in a borough, so in Yorkshire, in Leeds, I was a part of the Leeds, obviously, association. And then when I moved to sort of like the Batley area, because I was working in the Batley area of Yorkshire at that time, I was in that particular area, which is Kirklees, so it covers like Huddersfield and places like Batley and places like that. And I had obviously done my teacher training in Huddersfield, so I knew that area quite well. But I became treasurer, so it doesn't matter what I did. And years back, when I was like 18 years old, I was working in a bank, and I worked in a bank for 5 years. I put myself through university and teacher training, doing the financial background, and never forgot that. So when I became a treasurer for the union, obviously I had courses that I still went to through the union. Again, they help you, they train you up, and they help you gain the skills that you need. But the main point was that the treasurer role was very, very important, because this is obviously where members are sending money in through their subscriptions. You are making choices, you are making decisions with someone else about where that money should go, where that money should be spent. Okay. One of my previous roles when I was doing the assistant secretary job, you know, that was looking at getting younger members to join the union and looking at areas where, you know, we had got gaps. You know, for example, for me, it's clear, you know, okay, I'm 42 now, no jokes about my age, but when I was younger, I was representing the young teachers. I'm still representing the young, correct? So it's about having somebody that represents you. But I was also Asian, I was also British, I was also female. I was ticking those little boxes, you know, that other people can relate to, which is crucial. Okay, so it's important to bear that in mind. Now, at the minute, I'm seeing a lot of things about Britain. Yeah, I am. I might be abroad, but I still try my best to vote in a remote way. Why am I doing this video? I'm doing this video because I'm seeing a lot of people that have been brainwashed, that have been told to do this. I've seen people basically on a Thursday going and clap for the NHS, which is, I'm not mimicking it, I'm not ridiculing it, nothing. I've seen people praise Boris Johnson and the likes of the Orange Avenger, shall we call him, Mr. Trump, and saying that he's doing a marvellous job. However, yesterday some announcements were made in regards to sending school children back after lockdown. And woo-wee, have people gone crazy? Okay, so suddenly the penny has sort of like dropped for some of you that unfortunately were listening to, let's just say, rubbish. Okay, you've now realised that the agenda that you thought your lovely Prime Minister and my lovely Prime Minister, and when I say lovely, I'm being sarcastic. Sorry, Boris, but I didn't vote for you. The main idea is that, you know, until he's now starts saying sending your children back into school and sending people back into school or whatever, you know, that seems to have hit a vulnerability point with a whole mass of people. Now the penny is dropping that, you know, things are not how they should be. Now, I'm not telling you who to vote for. We make our own choices in life. However, you do have an amazing thing called a voice. If you are not part of a trade union, join one. Don't join it for insurance purposes. If you're going to join it, be an active member. I've told you my story. I've told you how it changed me. Instead of ranting, raving, doing TikToks, sorry, but TikToks are a general thing, or ranting and raving on your Facebook account, Instagram account, or whatever it is, Snapchat. There's so many like social things out there now. I'm like over it. Anyway, make a choice, make some improvements. Let's try and make some changes for the better. You know, even if you're not going to join or be active, then at least use this voice, express how you're not happy with this situation. I don't mean going, no. Let's do it in a proactive manner, in a polite manner. Let's do it where we are united, you know, and we are working as a force together. And I don't mean causing chaos. I don't mean causing scenes. I don't mean, let's do it in a fair way, a voice that can be heard. And the way you can do that is by uniting together. And obviously, next time when it is voting time, use this, yeah? Vote for the people that you genuinely think are going to make a good change, positively going to make a good change. And they're not just doing it to kiss butt. Sorry, but that's the way it is. So think carefully, use that voice, join, you know, trade unions, help them to help you. It's a two-way process, okay? We're in like a circle here, all right? And we need to be in it together. We have to help each other, okay? All right. Big love, big respect, peace.